Hey, what's up you guys, The Curious Owl here, and today I am going to be sharing with you guys my June 2022 TBR. So, TBR is going to be a little different, I think, this time around. I was going to try to reprioritize my TBR where for specific readathons, I'm going to basically do the best I can with them. So for instance, with June, Battle of the Bookish, I'm going to do the best I can to complete as many books as I can, but if I don't complete everything, it's fine. And then I have another readathon, Dessertathon, that I'm doing that is kind of similar in that, where like I'm going to do the best I can, and if I can get through stuff, that's great. But I have a higher priority list going on, which includes my Wheel of D20 stuff, the books I'm reading for the Brandon Sanderson read-along that I'm doing with Bree and Brandy, and then my Royally Booked Book Club book that I'm doing with Princess at Castle Library, the Court of Thorns and Roses read-along that I'm also doing with Princess, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is gonna be pretty much hit or miss in terms of whether or not I get through them, because I'm trying to take it a lot easier on myself and make it honestly more enjoyable for me to go ahead and pick things. So I have the higher priority list, like I said, and then the readathon stuff and other reading series that I've been doing in the past will kind of be lower tier, just because I don't really know if I'm going to get to a lot of them. And to be quite honest, there's a lot of things with some of the reading series I've been doing where I'm just not sure how much more I want to actively continue with them, in the sense that I don't know if I want to keep trying to read stuff back to back to back like I have been trying to do for so long. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the higher priority things first, starting with the Wheel of D20 stuff, and then I'm going to go through the rest of the higher priority things, and then we'll go through the 2 readathons I am doing and kind of talk about some of the books that are going to be involved in that. If the books that I'm reading for those readathons are a part of already established reading series I have been doing, I'll mention it. But other than that, I don't know whether I'm going to complete those. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our Wheel of D20 spin for June. We have 1 book we need to read for this month, which is very exciting. And I think you're going to be surprised to see what I end up having to go with for this month.
Hey guys, so today we're going to do our only spin for June's Wheel of D20 TBR. This is absolutely bonkers. I did not think, especially with how April went, I was going to be able to get to this point, but basically from here, if we complete this 1 prompt in the month of June with Battle of the Bookish going on and everything else, I will then, in my birthday month of July, be able to have a mood read month where, other than the books that are set on my TBR for reading series and stuff, I get to basically read whatever the hell I decide I want to. So I'm very, very excited for that. We basically get a free month away from Wheel of D20, and I couldn't be more excited to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and do our final spin for this Wheel of D20 round. What are we gonna get? Let's see. And we get, ooh, highest rated. Okay, interesting. This is gonna be difficult because this basically means I'm gonna have to pick something on my Goodreads that is the highest rated, but I only have a small fraction of my physical TBR and Kindle TBR on Goodreads. So we're going to basically just see what there is and kind of go from there.
Okay, so this is going to be interesting because highest rated, like I said, is going to be really sparse in terms of options, because on my want to read shelf, I have only a small fraction of my actual physical TBR and Kindle TBR on there. So basically this is going to be, we're going to go into my want to read section, filter it by highest rated, and whatever comes up that is not a part of a reading series I'm already doing, or is anything that's not a sequel, it's gonna be what I pick. So I guess let's see what we end up getting. Okay, so we're gonna sort by average rating. And okay, so Empire Storms, no. The Martian I don't have, I don't think. I don't have Wonder. Ooh, okay. Clockwork Angel. Okay, so I actually wanted to do a reading series with this in the future where I read the Mortal Instruments, Infernal Devices, all of that. So I'm gonna say no to that. But the next one that I could do is The Lightning Thief, which I am not opposed to. So I think that that's one of the ones we're gonna do. And then we have The Princess Bride right under that. Oh my gosh, and I have that as well. Oh, that's exciting. Oh my gosh, okay. So that's gonna be a really hard decision, but I'm very excited to see the results of that. Okay, so I have found both of the books. This is gonna be a very exciting round. So the only reason I have The Lightning Thief on the left side and therefore with the lower numbers is because it's the beginning of a series, and if I read it, I know that I'm gonna want to read the rest of this series. Whereas with The Princess Bride, it's a standalone and is the book that inspired basically one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, this has got to be one of the most perfect movies that there is in the world to me. So would be so excited to be able to read this. But let's see what the Wheel of D20 has in store for me. And it's a 5. So that does mean we're gonna read The Lightning Thief. Fun fact, I have never read this series in my entire life. And I have seen the movie, and I liked the movie for the most part, but I've never read the book. And now with the TV show in production, I would like to be able to read the entire series if I can, but maybe we'll see how I feel after the first one if I want to really binge the rest of the series. We'll see. So yes, the book I will be going with is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, the first book in the Percy Jackson series. I've never read this series. I feel like I've been kind of missing out though, because I've heard this is an amazing series. I really liked the first movie when it had come out, but I know that there's a lot of issues with it in terms of the content that was put in it. And I'm very excited for the TV show that Rick Riordan has been working on with Disney+. So in anticipation of that, I would like to try to at least get through the first book here. And in the future, maybe get through more of the books in the series. I do have the entire series as of now, so I would like to be able to read this. And actually, funny enough, my mom is also currently working through this. She's a bit of a slower reader though, so we'll see if I can catch up to her. Next, I have the books I will be reading in June for the Brandon Sanderson read-along that, like I said, is being hosted by Bree from Bree Cherie Reads and Brandy from Books with Brandy Shanae. This month we are going through 4 different stories. We are reading the entirety of Mistborn Era 2, which includes The Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, and The Bands of Mourning. These are much smaller books. They're like around 400 pages each. And then we are also reading a short story that is called Mistborn's Secret History, I believe. Like I think one of the novellas or short stories in Arcanum Unbounded. We will be reading all 4 of these over the course of the month because we're kind of trying to get through most of the Cosmere within 2022. And so to do that, we have to read all 3 of these this month, which I'm very excited for. I'm currently working through The Hero of Ages, which is the end of Mistborn Era 1. So I'm very excited to see how that ends. And then Era 2 takes place about 300 years after Era 1, so I'm curious to see how everything ties together, because I guess the characters involved in Era 1 are revered very highly in Era 2. Now, as I am filming this video, the Royally Booked book club pick has not yet been announced, but rest assured, I will be working through it. It's probably going to be another dark academia book because Princess has been really wanting us to read a lot of dark academia stuff with the Royally Booked book club. So I don't really know what we are going to be reading for this as of yet, but by the time I, get to probably reading that book, we'll know. It's just still a couple days early before she can announce it. It's currently May 26th when I film this, and I have to put this out May 27th. Then for the A Court of Thorns and Roses read along, I do have to still read A Court of Thorns and Roses, but then in June we have to read A Court of Mist and Fury. If you're not familiar with this read along, this is the read along that Princess is doing because it is in anticipation of her upcoming vow renewal later this year, and it is very much centered around the idea of A Court of Thorns and Roses, kind of like the vibes, the aesthetic that she is going for with the wedding. So she wanted to do a read along because she's also never really finished A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have not even started it, so I'm very excited to at least get started with it. I have a Kindle book that is a compilation of the first 4 books, and then I would think we would be reading the novella. And I don't know for certain if we're gonna read A Court of Silver Flames, which came out, I think, in 2021, but we'll see. I'm excited nonetheless. Okay, so with that being said, those are the for sure books I will be reading in the month, and some of them are actually going to be helping me with prompts for Battle of the Bookish or Dessertathon, so that's great, but we're gonna go over the TBR for those. First, starting off with Battle of the Bookish, because that is the readathon I host. If you don't know anything about it, I will leave the announcement video for you guys in the description, but I'm very excited to go through some of this. I do have one prompt that I'm not really sure what to fill with. It's going to really depend on if I find something in the books I haven't already slated for Battle of the Bookish, like books that are not already filling another prompt that will fit for this. So I'm first gonna go over the general prompts that everybody gets to use in Battle of the Bookish, and then we'll go over the specific team prompts for the team that I am running. So the first prompt is an LGBTQ plus book, which involves either LGBTQ characters or written by a person that is on the LGBTQ spectrum. And for this, I'm going to be reading a very anticipated read that has been so for a long time, and that is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel with a male-male romance, and the TV show for this just recently came out. I don't know whether or not I'm gonna watch it. It's not like something I am super interested in. I'm not very much a contemporary kind of person when it comes to watching TV shows, so I don't really know if I will ever watch it, but I have heard nothing but good things about this graphic novel series, so I'm excited to get to this one, and it'll be a lot easier for me to get through because it's a graphic novel, so it's gonna be a lot shorter than reading like a standard novel. Like I could probably get through this entire thing in a couple of hours. Next, for the prompt to read a book, I'm gonna be picking When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is a adult thriller, but I've heard Alyssa Cole is a really good author, not just with her more smutty content, but that this thriller is actually very, very fun, and it's also pretty short, so I think I could also like crank through this maybe in a couple of days. Then for the prompt of a TBR veteran, I am putting The Lightning Thief here because this has been on my TBR for literal years, like going on decades, because ever since this series first came out when I was like in elementary school, basically, I heard nothing but good things about it, and I just never got around to reading it. So I'm gonna basically get through this as soon as possible in June and be able to say that I finally read the first book. Next, for the prompt of a book with pictures, I am going to be picking up Heartstopper Volume 2. It just makes sense. I will have started the first one already, and I'll probably read Volumes 1 and 2 back to back, so that'll make this very easy for me. This one is quite a bit bigger, I think, than Volume 1, but I still think that this would be something I could spend like a day on. Like I could probably read 1 and 2 over the course of an entire day and do well. And then for the prompt of rereading a book, I am going to be picking up The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This will be my 3rd time reading it, and honestly, like, this was something I had already been thinking about wanting to do in June. Just for some reason, I have not been able to get this book out of my head since I read it, I think in like February, and it's just, this book just brings me so many good feelings. I love it every time I read it. So I think it's a good time for me to pick this up again for the 2nd time this year. Okay, now to go into the prompts for my team. I am running Team Middle Earth for this round. So we have 5 prompts that are going to be inspired by Middle Earth. The first one being Frodo, which is to read a book with a hero's journey. Now for this, I am pulling in my read from May for the Wheel of Time series, which is Lord of Chaos. I really struggled with reading The Fires of Heaven in May, which was supposed to be my April read, so I really didn't have time to get to this. and I wanted a little bit more of a break between these books, and so I figured the best way to try to get myself to read this again is to put it for a prompt. Again, this is one of those series where I think I'm just going to either completely write it off or just only do it every now and then in terms of reading the next book in the series, because these books are ginormous. This one in particular, without looking at the extra content at the end of it, is over 1,000 pages. It is 1,057 pages. So if I do get started with this, it is going to take me a long time to read because these books are very dense. So we will see if this ends up happening. It's basically going to be if I feel up to doing it in June, I'll read it, but this is not one of the books that is going to be on my higher priority list. The next prompt is the One Ring, which is to read a book that has a magical object. And this one is also going to be a book that's going to be kind of tentative whether or not I get to it, but I would definitely read this over Lord of Chaos. But it is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This is going to be a part of my next reread slash finish series because I think I only read maybe the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series and I never finished it. So I would like to restart from the first book and then finish out the Mortal Instruments series, and then maybe, we'll see, go as far as reading the other books involved in this world, because I think by the time I get done with the Mortal Instruments, the final book in the Last Hours will be released, and then it'll be some time before another series kind of either gets finished or at the very least before another book in a new series comes out. So I'll have quite a bit of time, hopefully. So again, I don't know if that's going to actually end up happening if I finish the Mortal Instruments, but that is kind of the thought. So it'll depend on how exactly I'm feeling. But again, this will be on the lower priority list because it's not something that is like super important, but it would just be really nice to be able to get started with another rereading finish series kind of thing. The next prompt is Gandalf, which is to read a book with a mentor character. And I don't have anything currently slated for this because I don't know of any of these books off the top of my head that would have a mentor character at all. There are a few that are not listed for Battle of Bookish I probably could put in. I'm just not 100% sure. So it's going to be kind of one of those things where if I find something that fills it that already isn't going to be counting for a prompt for Battle of the Bookish, I'll slide it in here. But as of now, this one's kind of the only open prompt that I have so far. The next prompt is Samwise, which is to read a book with an adorable main character. And I am pulling the other book that I had slated for Wheel of D20, which is The Princess Bride. I could not pass this up. When I ended up being able to put this and The Lightning Thief next to each other, I did think to myself that there is some way I'm going to be able to throw this in because I've never read the book, but The Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I've been on a kick of reading books that were, you know, created later on into movies. This is the original story that was then later adapted into the movie. So let me see when this was published. Originally, this book was published in 1931. So it's an old story, but I love this story so much. And the adorable side characters are Inigio, obviously, and Fezzik. I adore them so much. They're some of my favorite characters like ever in any story. They're great, and I love this so much. I'm so excited to be able to read this. This is like out of the lower priority things, like way high up on the list because like I'm genuinely excited to read this one when I can get a chance to read it. And then the final prompt we have is Mordor, which is to read a book with black on the cover or have an all black cover, basically. So for this, I'm gonna pull in a short story that I need to read for Magical Readathon before August, and that is The Demon in the Wood by Leigh Bardugo. This is a short story in the Grishaverse. I think this is supposed to be one of like the, I don't know if you would say fairy tales, but this is something in the Grishaverse basically that exists within the world of like Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone, stuff like that. So I had originally wanted to read this for Magical Readathon, but didn't get the chance to, and I have the ability to read the books that I can before the readathon in August, so if I can get this one done, this will probably be the first thing out of the lower priority stuff to read, and then The Princess Bride, because The Demon in the Woods, it's a short story, so I can like crank through that super quick. And now we're gonna go into the Dessertathon Readathon TBR. So Dessertathon is a readathon hosted by Bookish Buddies, along with other hosts basically, that is a play on the fact that a lot of people kept messing up Dessertathon's name with dessert. That's a very common problem with English, the difference between desert and dessert. So they decided to play it up and create an entire readathon in June based around desserts. I am a part of the Desert Gins, which basically is creating a recipe. The whole idea of the readathon is that you read books that earn you points to then create recipes, and our team recipe is baklava. So I have to read books that are involving the different ingredients to make baklava, and if I can complete the recipe or all of the books on that TBR, then I will earn so many points for my team, in addition to the points for the books that I've already basically accrued. There's 6 books that I have to read specifically for this. Again, this is going to be kind of more lower priority. We'll see what ends up happening, but there are a couple of things I've already mentioned that are going to be counting for things in Dessertathon. The first of which being for the prompt Cinnamon, which is to read a book that spices up your TBR, which I'll be putting the hating game in for, because honestly, I think a reread spices up the TBR, and this is also a romance with some very, very spicy scenes that I just adore. So this will be a very easy way for me to at least get started with this readathon. Also, Demon in the Wood will be played in here for the prompt of Philodo, which is to read a novella or a short story. Then I also have Lord of Chaos coming in for the prompt Butter, which is to read a book that keeps sliding off your TBR, or basically something that you keep wanting to read, but it keeps getting basically like put off. This is the perfect example of that. The Wheel of Time books always end up getting like shoved off to another month because they take so long for me to read that it's like a chore sometimes to get through them. Then for the prompt Sugar, which is to read a feel-good book, I'm putting in The Princess Bride because, come on, it's The Princess Bride. It's gonna make me happy. Then for the prompt Nuts, this was supposed to be a friend pick. So I'll place a screenshot here of the book that my friend Megan picked. Megan is one of our hosts for Battle of the Bookish. She is the leader for Team Panem. So I had her pick between 3 books that I was very excited to read, and she ended up picking No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. And then finally, the last prompt for this is Vanilla, which is to read a book you keep saying you'll read. It's similar to ones that like are sliding off your TBR, but this one, it's not so much that it's been on your TBR multiple times and gets getting pushed off. It's just one that you keep saying you'll read, but you never get around to it. And this one, I meant to read in May, but I didn't get around to it. And I don't even know if I'm gonna get to it in June, but if I somehow can, I will be very impressed, especially if I can finish it, because it is even longer than Lord of Chaos. And it's it. I meant to read this in May for my Stephen King reading series, and then I could not get around to it. It is so fucking big, and there's so much that I'm just like, I don't know if I want to read it. Like, I'm scared. There's so much going on with it. But if we look at everything except the back content of this book, it is 1,153 pages. Again, this is very low priority. I do not know if I'm ever going to get to this one, but if I somehow can and finish it, I will be very, very impressed. Like, this is lower than reading Lord of Chaos at this point. Like, if we're looking at lower priority things, this is at the very bottom of that, truthfully, because I don't want to read it, but I do, and I'm scared, and I don't. Ugh. Okay, so now we're gonna quickly go into the other books that are on that lower priority list that have not fit anything. But again, with that one prompt for Gandalf for Battle of the Bookish being open, it is possible that something in here could fit that mentor prompt. It would just be a matter of, if I read it, seeing if that ends up being the case. First, we have Crown of Swords by Robert Jordan. This is book 7 in the Wheel of Time. If I can somehow get through Lord of Chaos and still be interested in continuing with the series, I'll get through this one, but this technically was supposed to be my read for June. Just, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to it. Then I have Blood of Elves and The Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski, books 1 and 2 in the Witcher series fully. I decided that I'm kind of seeing whether or not I really want to continue with Witcher just because it is kind of more of a lower priority thing. These probably could fit the mentor prompt if a mentor does come in, but I don't think it does. So it will depend on whether or not that comes in more, because I just don't know, for instance, if like Ciri is going to be involved in these books at all. Geralt is like a mentor too, in a sense. So if Ciri comes in and we get to see some of that stuff with her, then it would definitely count for the mentor prompt, but I'm not betting my hedges on that one just because I'm not sure if that's really the case. And then the last book that I have that is on that lower priority list, it's honestly higher than it, but not by much because it is part of my Stephen King reading series, and that is The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. This is a much shorter book, but this is chronologically, in terms of publishing, published after it. So if I want to stay chronologically published, I would have to read it first before this one. I don't want to even try to lift all these up, but I'm gonna see if I can do it. Okay, I managed to stack them kind of nicely, but it's all gonna fall apart, so this is all you really get. But these are all the books. There we go, they're all in frame that I'm gonna be reading. Holy hell. Am I gonna be able to take a thumbnail photo with this? I have no idea. If you're participating in any of the readathons I'm doing, please feel free to let me know. Oscar is apparently going to try and ruin everything because he hears me struggling and he wants to like topple my books over. But yeah, so anyway, thanks so much for joining me. Let me know what you guys are gonna be reading in the readathons if you're participating, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye!